Yo, esports in the front. We'll be in the back. I got. Not now.
Test, test, got it.
As if I'm not loud enough for people, are what? I'll use the microphone.
Test, test. Ooh. I like my voice. Thank you guys for coming. My name is David Sanders. I'm the BSO president on campus. We ask that in this conversation that we be fully transparent, and this is the time for our students to come and give concerns. So if you have any questions, the questions should be clarity questions instead of questions to their answers. And now my VP will give a synopsis of what the town hall may come. Thank you. My name is Lim Cartman, for those of you who do not know me. Yeah, I am the vice president of the Black Student Organization. And I just want to say that, you know, last year, We Matter Week, it came out of like the national focus on racial justice and the popularity of the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, but as time has went on, we starting to see like that as media coverage went down, it seems like the commitment to racial justice and inclusivity is not a popular topic anymore. But yet, us Black students, we still face the same issues. The issues still remain, and sometimes in certain cases, they even compounded. So, man, like today, we're just here just to talk. You know, we're not here to call anybody out. We're here to just call people to action and just talk about some things. So, before we start asking any questions, I just want to get a commitment from everybody up here today that after this, we can come together and work on these issues and talk more in depth about these concerns today. So, can I get a commitment from everybody up here? Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jolie Four. I'm the student body president. I'm super excited that Student Senate is partnering with BSO for our second town hall during We Matter Week. We are really excited and hope that we can make a lot of progress. Just a reminder to everyone in the audience, we will be keeping track of time just to make sure that we are able to fit everyone in. So you guys will have a 2-minute time limit on your initial question. So we'll just be keeping track of that and we'll remind you at 30 seconds.
Hello everybody, I'm Ben Jacob, the Student Body Vice President. I just want to let you all know that Student Senate is committed to continuing this conversation after tonight. We're committed to doing a workshop in a few weeks, bringing together the big concepts and issues and concerns that are brought together tonight into a workshop space to have administrators come together with students, sit down with students, and start picturing a future on campus for Black voices, Black students, underrepresented students, and to create some policy change and ways that we can create change on campus. We're also committed for our diversity and inclusion committee to meet regularly with the new AVP for diversity, equity, and inclusion on a bi-weekly basis so that we can continue getting that transparency and continuing discussion, not just annually at a town hall. So just know that we are committed to continuing this conversation. So please come to us with any concerns. Thank you.
And just one more reminder, if you could state your name when you come up to say your question, that would be really great. So thank you.
My name is Richard Sever. I'm an associate professor in the Department of English, and I have the pleasure of asking the first question. Even though I'm not a student, I do thank the students for giving me this opportunity. Recently, there has been a surge of Black faculty and staff leaving this institution. May I add that it's not just leaving, we're hemorrhaging Black faculty and staff. Most notably, Brian Martin, Janelle Love, Stacy Miller, Antoine Busby, Philip Powell, Alana Karras, Kim Fields. There's clearly a trend. As you see your constituents of color leave, do you think there are issues within this university that causes this?
So you want to listen to our answers, or you want us to listen to you, or well, for what I got in my 2 weeks at VAPO is that we are located in Valparaiso City, that is very conservative, and the history of the city has been of prejudice, and I think that makes difficult for people that is trying to come and live here to stay. And I heard a lot of advice from people that were recruiting me that I should be thinking about these issues when I'm thinking about the schools for my kids and also where I'm going to live. So I'm just thinking that that might be part of the problem for what I learned so far. So I don't know if somebody wants.
Well, I can say that I've known or do know each person you named. So I'm well aware of all of those. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lissa Yogan. I'm the Assistant Provost for Faculty Affairs. So this is touching on faculty and staff. And of course, I think there's issues here. And I think those issues usually affect our faculty and staff of color even more than they do other faculty. But I think they're affecting all faculty. So not to minimize that, but to say that there are certainly factors that have been present in the last 2 years where we have lost a lot of faculty and staff, many of them very talented. And some of those factors are the budget constraints that we've faced, the financial pressures and issues which had led to a salary decrease for all faculty and staff of 5%. And that is hard to live on when you come there, and you may have other opportunities or places where you can go that are not facing that same thing and they pay more. That's hard to match, to be honest. Should we develop a program that pays certain faculty more than others in order to keep them here and to create a more diverse representation? Possibly. It's something that we would have to discuss, but it would have to be worked out within the context of the budget. Can we do more to support our African American, Latinx faculty and staff? Absolutely. I think you come in, and I think we ask a lot of you, if that's the population that you fall into, a lot to do extra service work and meet the needs of lots of people here who both need support or education. And I think we can lift some of that burden by more training and more participation and more ownership of this issue on the part of everybody. So I don't want to say there isn't anything we could do. We certainly can do a better job. There's no doubt about it. But there are also other factors operating right now that's making it difficult to retain faculty and staff. And a lot of it is due to these financial concerns.
Good evening. I'm Karen Allen. I'm Dean of the College of Nursing and Health Professions. I first of all want to applaud the students who are doing this and having the courage to do this. We did lose some good people. One of the things I think we missed was an opportunity to ask them why they were leaving. So I don't think we have any exit interview information. I could be wrong. So each of us have experiences that we have here, and some of them are common amongst us. So when you see that kind of an exit, the opportunity would have been good to intentionally at the beginning to begin with speaking with each one of them and say, why are you leaving? And that way we would know if it's related to money, if it's related to a sense of belonging, if it's related to a better opportunity, if it's related to I was let go because of the budget. But I think that as we begin to number faculty and staff of color and Black faculty and staff, we need to list their names one by one. So if Richard Sevier decides to leave, Richard, why are you leaving? You know, that shows caring, that shows the fact that we appreciate you here. So if it's something that we did wrong, then we make a mental note to not do that thing again. So I think that's one of the things that we can do to address it.
Stuart Cooper, Director of Counseling Services here. I think one thing going on is a parallel process. If you look at staff and faculty here, and then you look at the students, one is the burden of the tremendously escalated racial stress of the last 2 or 3 years that is just tremendous and keeps going on unabated and unabated. Secondly, then there's the extra burden. When you don't have a large enough group, then it ends up that the burden on those who are here, whether that's students, staff, or faculty, becomes greatly enlarged to go ahead and provide support for each other. And third is this is also reflecting a broader kind of problem within higher education and also work in general. The number of people who are leaving, who want to leave, is higher than kind of any time I ever recall in my many years of kind of being here or just working period on that. And it's just reflecting a lot kind of going on for that. So there's a lot of things going on, but I think they're, again, with goodwill, I think, and good thought, they are addressable to be moved in the right direction. I will add to that we have a parallel process also with our students of color in terms of our retention, that we differentially lose students of color over majority students, I think probably for some similar reasons.
My name is Nick Davis. I'm the treasurer of BSO. I think this next question is a perfect segue from the last one and the answers that was given. The faculty do not accurately represent the BIPOC student body. If we do not have the proper representation, then faculty are not equipped to teach people that are different from them. Why is it that not all professors are required to do diversity and inclusion training?
There is a plan to require staff and faculty members to do diversity and training, and it's in the action agenda. And what I understood is a lot of this conversation is because the action agenda has been stopped for a while for many reasons, but there is a plan. The plan talks specifically about new coming faculty and new coming staff, but my plan as Assistant Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is that we can extend that to all our staff and all our faculty. I think the issues of diversity evolve with time, and we all need to be trained different times and different points, because the issues, some of them are the same, as we can see, but some of them change. So that is in the action agenda, and one of my priorities is to move the action agenda forward. So I hope we can before you graduate, you can see some of these trainings happening. That's my goal.
Okay, you just mentioned the action agenda. So my next question is, like, why has the action agenda been on like a hold? And another question that goes with that is because with this action agenda being like stopped and not seeing much action out of an action agenda, it has produced distrust from the students with administrators. So a lot of the students of color feel like administrators don't take their concerns seriously. So like, what are some things that you can, say to combat that and, say that that's not true, or, just appeal to some of the students, let them know that you do care about the issues that we face.
For what I understood that the action agenda has stopped is because there was a lot of leadership transition. In this moment, we had a transition of president, we have a transition of a provost, we have several transitions for the deans, we have people that left, which is related to your previous question. We have COVID in the middle of the action agenda, and we were bringing people that can put this action agenda together. And I know that when I was recruited, the main, the most important goal to bring me here is to restart this work that the community fight for, and also got together and work in these plans for the university. So I think those were some of the reasons. I don't know if you have more historical reasons about why this happened.
I can share. I've been on Civic for the past, how long? 2-3 years. And so I can share that up until May, Civic was actively working on items of the action agenda, and there were action agenda task force meetings up until May. And then typically in May, Civic does take a pause for the faculty members that are on there. And so then typically we would then resume in August, but as we all know, there's been some transitions in the leadership of who was running really that and pushing that forward. And so excitedly with Angela, hopefully those will start to pick back up again, and you'll see some more movement on all of those.
And what I was going to add is that I don't think it's stopped. I just think the action that is going on is not so visible to everybody out there, and it's not appearing on the dashboard. So let me give you an example. I know that faculty are beginning to work on the pieces that were assigned to them, which is around tenure and promotion standards and diversifying the curriculum and the way they teach their courses. We did over an hour-long session at a faculty workshop that was widely attended by most faculty this fall, and had them begin to think about the different ways that they could integrate other voices, different materials, text, whatever, into the classroom. And so they've produced documents, and we are sharing that out, and they're thinking about that as they go forward. Does that mean that every course has been diversified? No. So we can't just click it off or check the box yet, but it doesn't mean that things are not happening in that area. The same for promotion and tenure standards, quite honestly. And as frustrating as it is for both being a student, and I think even for myself sometimes in administration, change is slow because we have a lot of, we operate on semesters, so it takes a whole semester sometimes for a process to work its way through to where it would be implemented the next one. And sometimes those cycles are yearly. So for tenure and promotion, for example, to put standards in place, faculty have to talk about it. They have to understand, what does that standard look like? I mean, what would you have to meet exactly? And what would we be looking for in someone's portfolio for them to get promoted from assistant professor to associate professor? So we have to figure that out. And then we have to see if we can put this in place. Does it go, each college does that process separately. There is not one process for all colleges. Will each college pick that up? How would that go? That's the kind of thing that we are working on right now this year. So there is stuff going on. It looks like it's paused. The other thing is, back to budget, but in reality is, we were given a budget for the action agenda, but it's not enough to just immediately do everything. So other conversations are occurring right now about how to prioritize those items on the action agenda and to pick the ones that we think we can tackle or best use that money for right now, and then build a budget for next year, et cetera, and keep movement going. So all of those processes are still happening. It has not been paused or stopped. It's just that we had to take some time to begin to work these through our different systems.
One of my worries when I took the job, it was that there was time that had happened and the action agenda was not working. And I believe that it's important for my division and for the administration to start working in these projects that were designed by the community, the sooner and the better. And also I believe that the way that, so my division is the one who's gonna be disseminating the budget, and I wanted to work with Civic to make sure that if we cannot fund everything, we can fund a task that move the the process forward. And today I realize that there's only 2 Civic members and I have to recruit 20 more. So right now, today I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to create another process that is also democratic so we can decide when we will moving forward with the funding that we have. And I'm thinking to bring the civic attaches to the agenda. There's the name of the implementators of the task force. They and also the OMP collaborators. And these are only in my plans. These are here. And these are in conversations with me and Mary and the people that is trying to move this forward. That's especially my division. But I do understand that the concern that the students and the faculty that work in this process might feel that their work is not valued because there was a lot of work to make this happen. So I'm trying to move as fast as possible so we can restart this effort and honor the work that was done before I got here. It should be.
I asked the Vice President if there were students on Civic, particularly students of color.
Now it's on. Okay. I'm Mark LaBarbera. I'm the Director of Athletics, and I want to echo what Lissa said. There is activity related to the action agenda going on. So in athletics, we did over the summer and now into the fall, we are in the final steps of finishing our strategic diversity plan. And that will, like I said, the goal is to have that done by the end of the semester, and then we will roll that out as far as actually acting upon it as we go into the new semester. And that will be part of our broader revised strategic plan for the athletics department. So, but we did have a committee, and where it is now is it's gone back not only to the committee that created it, but back to our student leaders and to our coaches for the completion of the action items, to make sure that the action items are appropriate and will actually create action, not just have goals and strategies. So there is, as Alyssa said, there is activity going on related to that. Maybe we just haven't done a good job of communicating all of that.
Yeah, Lem, I was, thank you for the question too. And I think that the sort of tail end of your question was, do you care about this? And the answer to that is I think that most of us care deeply about it. We often find ourselves in positions where we're not quite sure what to do. Probably similar to the way you feel sometimes too about it. In what Student Life has been doing, and we have a commitment in Student Life. Again, we have staff that sit on Civic, we have staff in the retention committee, we have staff in a number of different committees and working areas on these topics. Right now, with the loss of many staff in the multicultural programs area over the last several months, what we've been trying to do is focus any time and energy we have on supporting the student organizations that are there. So obviously you all are aware of that. And I think that's where we're committing our time right now, with the expectation that as staff is hired in Angela's area, which she is actively in the middle of doing right now, Student Life we are in those hiring committees. We are a part of what's going on, but right now we're trying to help you all day to day with what's happening in the time frame that there just aren't enough staff right now to take care of it. And so I think that's our primary action at the moment. Also, the period of time in COVID in which so many positions were cut at the university, there were 170 staff positions as well. In student affairs, we've completely reorganized. We lost 10 staff. We had to rehire 10 staff during this past 6 months. After we restructured everything too. So I think folks are a little bit reeling right now and trying to get back to functional organizations and committee work and sort of functional operations to try to do the work that needs to be done. So we're committed to it, and we're there and we're coming. So.
So the question I had is completely related to what we were talking about specifically with the diversification of the curriculum. And you did mention that, so there was that workshop that happened and that it was well attended. So because it's not something that's required, would there be any way to get like a listing or anything like that of the professors that did attend? Because I think a lot of students would contest. It would be wonderful to see which professors are in support of promoting inclusion in their classrooms even before it's made a requirement, and that I'm sure those are professors that students would be interested in taking classes with.
I wish I could give you that list. I don't think I can for two reasons. One, we didn't take set attendance, although I might be able to go back through RSVPs and figure out who basically was there. But secondly, not all people came. It wouldn't be an accurate list in terms of knowing that someone was there because they specifically wanted to work on diversifying the curriculum in their class. The workshop was 4 hours long, the faculty workshop, and it also covered the strategic plan, which we're engaging in. And it's also, I don't know, it's kind of just like something we do. So like, there's a lot of people who come every year, no matter what the topic is, because that's what we do. We have a fall faculty workshop and a spring faculty workshop, and there's always topics to try to bring faculty up to date on what they need to know, what's current, what would be useful information. So the fact that you were there may or may not indicate that you had a strong interest in diversifying your curriculum. So I understand from the student's viewpoint, I would want to know which faculty are really, interested in this topic and working to do that. And I'm not sure the best way to find that out. I suspect you have a pretty strong network among yourselves in some ways as you get to know different faculty in different classes and have, pass word of mouth that this professor, had us read this book. That was really interesting. Or this professor talked about this current event that involved race and systemic oppression or whatever it may be. And that was great. Let me think about that. I also think, lists are kind of, I don't know if anyone has a better idea right now.
If I could jump in and give you something concrete in this context of curriculum. I'm Tricia Milam, I'm Dean of the Library. And last year, working with Stacy Miller, we came up with a list of resources that we wanted to provide through the library, not just academic resources, but poetry, fiction, real life memoir accounts and all, that specifically fall in what you call the umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But basically, it's a way to change the tenor of the library collection from the majority voice, which is just the de facto, to purposefully integrating all of the voices that should have been there all the way a long time. So at first, we've got to start out by holding it separate and above, right? So that we can make sure we're doing the right thing. Last year, we purchased over 70 items, book, DVDs, and so on, around $3,000 worth, which doesn't sound like much, but it is a kernel of a start. And we in the library are very, very committed to doing that and more this year. The faculty all know across campus that we will spend funds specifically when they have an assignment or an idea or something they want everybody to get their hands on. And the library is going to be the common place for that to go on. So that's one piece of the diversity work that we library faculty took on and that we will continue to do moving forward.
Oh, sorry, I'm taking notes.
what part of the process that I envision to select how are we going to disseminate the budget is to ask the people in charge of moving this part of the action agenda to send us an update in what they have done and also the needs of the budget so we can evaluate them as a group and decide how to move forward. So I think what I'm hearing is that it could be good that after we get this information, we post it right away in the website that we have for the action agenda and then start informing these efforts. I don't know if we're gonna be able to give names, but at least informing that the updates of what the work has happened already or that is going to happen and how is this moving forward in regard all of them, especially the curriculum.
I think the other thing that we're gonna have to do as academic leaders, I'm just gonna speak for myself, is I know we're working on some things. For example, we, for the mannequins, for example, in the skills lab, we've just purchased masks of different racial groups so that we can teach students how to care for folks from different racial groups. And we teach the class social determinants of health and global health. But I think that what we need to do is something intentional, like sitting down with a group of students, and Lem, maybe you can speak to that, and ask you, even though we have these classes, do we do a deep enough dive into how we teach you to care for people of different colors? So a hypertension medicine that I may take as an African American, I cannot take the same hypertension medicine that a white American can take. The body operates differently. So the research shows that. So are we teaching that in our classes? And that's the kind of deeper dive that we've got to become committed to, so that the action agenda that looks at curriculum is not just something we hang up on the wall, but something we actually dig into and look at and say, you know, we have an opportunity here to teach differently now, and we need to take a hold on that.
I think I want I'll give another example from that. I can't tell you about the names, even the people at my own table, but we were very engaged in that conversation. And at least I am also a professor and I teach research ethics, and led to a very direct discussion in classroom about that we're going to be studying things like the Tuskegee experiment, the Chinaman experiment, where persons of diversity were exploited and killed in this country for the purposes of research. And how would that be, how could we best handle that in the classroom where the students also were diverse? And so I think it was a very productive discussion that, and there were other people at the table had equal ideas for their own courses.
Hello, I'm Amber Mosley. I'm in the Counseling Center. I'm the Clinical Services Administrator and Assistant Director over there. So the question that I have is, what is the institutional protocol for when a student is found saying racial slurs or behaving in ways that are clearly targeted towards a specific group? And how are these instances handled in a just and equitable manner?
Everybody points the finger at me. It's in that sense. My name is Ryan Blevins. I serve as the Dean of Students at the university, and the type of incident that Amber is describing is what we would call a bias complaint type of process, where we would probably ask the individual who brought that forward to submit that statement or submit that incident to this team of individuals that meets weekly and discusses any type of complaints or concerns that are brought forward to the committee. The committee then works with, and the committee is represented from a variety of areas, from everything from the diversity and concerns area, diversity, equity, inclusion area. Angela sits on the committee now as well, to HR, to BUPD, to student life, to a variety of different group individuals in the room. And we discuss the incident, and we start working with the individual who filed the complaint to see what kind of course action, what they would like to see. And we start focusing on the restorative aspects of the incident. What do we need to do to repair the damage to the community, to the trust that was lost through this incident? We need to educate the alleged respondent, the person who allegedly did the action. We need to educate them, but we also need to find a way of healing the community. So it's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of one-on-one work with a lot of individuals.
Unfortunately, there's not a magical formula yet that we've discovered that solves all these types of concerns with one magical solution. If we did that, we would go on the road, solve all those problems in a day. It's pretty brilliant. But we do take these things very seriously. This committee meets every week, and we discuss, and then we have individuals within that committee do the initial follow-up and have those conversations, and then kind of start working the problem from there until there's a restorative solution that is developed.
And I just been in a couple of those committee meetings, and something that I'm bringing to the table when I'm doing the committees. Okay, we can ask the student what kind of restorative practice or they would like to see. We have some options, but on my side, I ask, okay, that's for that process, but what if this is a pattern? What we can do as an institution? Maybe we can promote a training for these or these communities that it happens currently and continuously to make sure that we're proactive in the way that we train not only our staff and faculty, but also our fellow students on the hurtful and how we can hurtful the experience of your peer students. So that's what I'm bringing to that, okay, as an institution, what we could do in a proactive manner with the information that we're getting from these cases. So that's a voice that I'm bringing to the committee.
And it's great having Angela and her area also in this committee, because it helps us not only work with the individuals, but we can then identify, is this a systemic issue that we need to start looking at as an institution? And there's enough, the right people are in the room to start having those conversations and taking them back to the upper levels as well. And do we need to look at training initiatives for faculty or staff, or do we need to look at opportunities for students to help educate students on these matters as well? So it's a great group of individuals to work with, and it's actually one of the more productive groups as well, because we actually can see the results at the same time. But there are some systemic issues that are identified that helps us inform things like the action plan and elements within the action plan at the same time.
I just thought I would share that Carrie Whitty, I serve as Assistant Vice President of Student Life. And for any of you who are juniors, when you entered into the institution, you were asked to take an online workshop specifically around diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you are a sophomore, I do not believe you were asked to do that. We've returned that training, so all first-year students were expected to and completed. I think we have 16 students that we are finding. We will find them, and they are completed this online over the summer training specifically around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Then there was a follow-up program that happened during Welcome Week, which was also mandatory for all new students, that was led by the staff at the time in the Office of Multicultural Programs to continue the dialogue. And so there is a commitment to continue to offer those types of interactions, those types of learning moments, those types of introduction to language and words and references and understanding about how we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion here at Valparaiso University, and how we interact with one another and setting the expectation for that. So I just thought I would share that as well.
My name is Casey, and to branch off that question that was just asked, we hosted a privilege walk this past Monday, and some of the concerns that were addressed in our post groups where we would meet and talk about things that they wish to see in the privilege walk and things that they'd like to hear about. The idea of microaggressions was brought up, and we can all see, overt racism and how to address overt racism. But in a PWI, a primarily white institution, when microaggressions are a majority of students of color's concern, do we think that we're doing enough to address those microaggressions within the classroom and on campus, and what can be done more to appease those students and kind of help with their fear of that?
I think that has several points of reference. So these kind of conversations, the training that is happening, make the students aware that that could happen, and the process of the bias incidents help us to have this kind of information and that's happening, and help us to work with the individuals if that's apparent individually, but also you have identified this since last year. The microaggressions is a big part of the action agenda, and what promoted that we seek to train faculty and staff continuously is to avoid these kind of microaggressions, because they can really make the environment really rare for students and faculty and staff. So the action agenda had the training that we can do, but I think it's not only the training to make aware the students that they have to report these things to us, but also give the follow-up with the bias incident, and also to identify other points of education or interventions that we can do to make sure that we minimize this as much as possible. So that is, we have to, the microaggression part, we have to address it in several ways. First of all, giving the tools so we know that these are happening. And also, one of the tools is make sure that students know that they exist and they might encounter and they're not accepted in campus. So we should know, making sure that the administrators are not willing to accept that either, at least many of us, and of course the training part. So I think several points that we have to do that, and I think it has to be continuous, because we might have new staff, new students, new faculty that might need to understand the culture of Valparaiso and what we're trying to do with the culture of Valparaiso, which is not accepting microaggressions anymore.
Hello, I'm Frank Chungi. I'm a senior here, and my question kind of piggybacks off of the last two questions. Over my past couple of years here, I have heard students say things that aren't like overtly racist, but things that clearly shouldn't be said. And I was just wondering, what is the process of determining what people can say and what people shouldn't say, and then how does that get communicated to the students?
Well, here we sit at an institute of education, and that's largely my answer. But I'm talking, before I was a faculty member, I did work in student life, and I think there is so much to be learned through living and working in community, as much or more than you learn in the classroom. And I think that education has to go in all parts. And the previous question on microaggressions, I guess I want to say that we can't start working with the assumption that everyone even understands what a microaggression is. Because I really believe that we have a number of people on campus some who've never heard the word, and others who've heard the word but really aren't quite sure what is meant. And like the person who asked the question and said, okay, overt racism, easier to identify and then, do something about. Microaggressions, much harder simply because of this, because it's harder to exactly identify. It's, not everybody has that level of education. And I think what your question is getting at is much the same. So people in our country and on our campus, therefore, are a little nervous to speak to each other sometimes. They're not sure what language I can use, what language I shouldn't use. And to some, it feels like an ever-shifting landscape. So I think we have to continually work at the education of each other. And we can all, I'm not saying I don't own responsibility. I can do everything I can to help faculty, learn this and provide that. But everybody has to help each other through some of this and learn about the different areas. I don't have a better answer for you than that, other than it's going to take a lot of education.
I think if I could, I would add also another technology we have available to us, and that's bystander intervention. I think that if you can have a cadre of people who are trained and are courageous, then they can call out their colleagues, and it's easier in a sense to call out colleagues sometimes than someone who's in a power superior position. So I think that's something we should definitely do more of here.
So the goal of applying on making the action agenda is to move the institution to a different culture. And the culture has to be in classrooms where the teachers understand that these microaggressions that are difficult to identify is not always to say, well, we don't know, but we can make sure that we try to be very careful in the classrooms. We try to be very careful in the resident hall. We try to be very careful with administrators. And I think moving all these parts, not only of the action agenda and all the concerns that you have with us, will not only the education, formal education, but will transform the culture where all the faculty members say, in my classroom, that is in the gray zone. We don't like the gray zone too much. There's always a more gray zone than others, right? And they have to be sophisticated enough to know where the students of different backgrounds might feel threatened or discriminated. The same for administrators, and the same for faculty, and the same for students. So it's not easy to decide what is a microaggression. That's why we need to listen to the students. That's why we need to listen to the staff, because maybe something that we didn't consider before, like the pronouns. I know that the students right now, they value the pronouns that they give, with they identify themselves. It's important for them. And maybe generations of faculty members don't understand that this is important and they dismiss it. So it's when other faculty members, when my division, when the administrators here that know that's important for the students, come and say, well, you know what? You have to respect their pronouns. And that's just an example, but I think it's not easy, but also that doesn't take away the responsibility of the institution to try to identify it and prevent it. And in the moments that we need to do restorative justice, apply it.
Hello, my name is Matthew Spivey. I have a two-part questions. So y'all was talking about these microaggressions and having all these tools for students to have available, but we have all the tools available. We have CORE, where we can have people have mandatory events where we can talk about microaggressions. We have all these ways of talking about it, but nobody ever steps up and says, I'm going to talk about this. This is something that we should all talk about. We have all these CORE approved events that have something involving like this random thing or XYZ, but we never have one about African American history or anything important about us, the minorities. When is this going to change? Even for core CC students, they have all these white textbooks and white history books. When we're going to get African American history or Latino history books for them so they can learn about our background or any minority backgrounds, where we come from or where we're from, and actually see the change inside the classrooms.
All I can say to that is absolutely. You are right on point. So we have got to stop talking about it and just begin doing it. And you called us out on it, and I think that we're writing that down, and we need to make that happen. You know, we have philosophical discussions about the sun and the moon. And we really need to be talking about what's happening in society. We need to orchestrate, organize discussions and have difference and have it be safe to have difference of opinion. You know, people are walking around on eggshells around each other. I have an opinion about, you know, what happened January the 6th. You know, we're going to discuss that on campus. I have an opinion about George Floyd. We're going to discuss that on campus. So we're not, this is an educational institution, but we're not allowing, how I put this, we're not allowing civic informed education to occur. And we need to get out of the 16th and 17th. And I don't think that's college, it's not my college. Okay. But we have to get out of the 16th and 17th century and get into the 21st century. So you're absolutely on point.
I can't add anything either, Matthew. Thank you. I did take notes. I will take it back. I can talk to the core director. I can talk to people in Christ College.
Hello, my name is Justine, and I have a question about student involvement with diversity and equity. So as an institution, how have we, or how can we institutionalize cultural competence and engagement for student leadership with the clubs and everything like that?
Taking this, yeah, okay. So excellent question. It is an active part of our current dialogue. So there are a couple of things we're doing. So we returned the programming for all new students coming in related to the online program and the program during Welcome Week. The second part that we are in preparation to do, which will actually go into effect in the fall of 2022, we are planning a leadership development retreat for all of the primary leaders for all of the major student center called Tier 1 organizations, in combination with leaders from other aspects of campus who are driving change on campus, who have access to some of the financial resources to create change. We are going to go away from campus together. We're planning to take somewhere between 50 to 80 students. We have already booked the site. We're going to go off site to do that. It'll be an overnight program, and the intention is to dialogue, to learn about one another, to stop operating in a silo or in isolation. I say during focus, if you do not know what Chinese New Year is, or why we would be having Hispanic Heritage Month Festival, or why we have a Black History Month dinner, you're probably supposed to go to those things. By the way, our African American students don't need to go to the Black History Month dinner. We want to be there to celebrate and to be together, but by the way, that isn't really the intended audience. And I just watch parents and students just look at me like, right? So we need to collaborate. Why is it BSO's job to plan the Black History Month dinner? Why are we not doing that cooperatively? Why is Live the only group planning programming during Hispanic Heritage Month? That's crazy to me. Why is Alliance the only organization doing things during October or April or whatever? That is not okay. Part of the reason is because we haven't created an environment where those students are in a room together being like, can we talk about this? And can we be a part of that? And We Matter Week is what is starting that conversation. Because last year groups were wanting to be a part of it and wanting to be motivated and wanting to be in dialogue and in conversation with one another. The challenge is that if I were to say to you all, hey, we're going to take everybody off campus in 2 weeks, you all would have been like, what? We don't know any of these people. We don't know you. We don't have staff. So the reason it is in a year from now is because we want the new staff to be hired in the OMP with Angela, with that team. We will be creating a unit to then role model for the students to say, like, it's cool for fraternities and sororities and student orgs and Senate and culture-based groups and chapel groups to all actually be working together, because that staff is all going to now work together. And you will see it there. And then everybody will be like, okay, I feel safe because my staff are going to be there, right? But we can't do that right now because not everybody feels comfortable and or safe with all the staff here. So the plan is over the next 6 to 8 months is to begin to build those relationships so that everybody feels okay to go off campus together. And then we're going to continue the transformation of the conversation. And that is the commitment. We already have the funding for it. There will be no cost to students to be able to go to that and be a part of that dialogue. So directly to your question, it is on our mind. It is something that we're actively working on. The third thing that I would just share is the creation of the Center for Student Involvement, which is up on the second floor, is very intentional. Up until the reorganization of the Division of Student Life and with Vice President Janowiak, it was everybody stay in your sandbox. Carrie Whittier, you go over there and you only deal with fraternities and sororities and do not talk to anybody else. And so you go over there and you stay in your sandbox. And Byron, you stay in your sandbox. And everybody had to stay, and nobody's sandbox was like near one another. And and we see that at the institution, and I know you feel that as students. You have to feel that, like I have to take this hat off because I'm walking in this person's office. Now I gotta take this hat off because I'm going over the chapel. And now that is uncomfortable. It's not okay. I've never been okay with that. And so we created a Center for Student Involvement because that's what it all is. It is the engagement of students in their life on campus, and not just their organizational life, their life as a student. You should not have to divide a line between when I want to be celebrating my faith and when I want to be celebrating my culture and when I want to be involved in a club and when I want to play rec sports. No, you're just a student. You are just you, and you are great just the way you are, and we need to meet you where you are. You should not have to figure out which sandbox I have to be in to be able to have which conversation. So please know that the Student Life Division has done that with great intention, high levels of intention. I am thrilled that Angela is here. I cannot wait for the new Assistant Vice President for Mission, Church, and Ministry to be here. These are key hires at the university, along with the reorganization in the Student Life Division. You should not know who reports to who. You should just be students, and you should know that we're on your team. And so thank you for the question. This is what we're doing. And again, it's some of this work that's happening behind the scenes that maybe you all don't see, but it is all done with a great deal of intention and love and care. And we also are in a position to just listen better, listen more, because I'm not a student at Valpo. You guys are. And I come to work every day for you. But if you do not feel like you can talk to me because I'm not in the right office, that's a problem, right? And so that is what we're attempting, those silos are what we're attempting to break down. So thank you for the question. I hope that kind of answers your question.
That's an excellent answer. So I've always felt like it's the job of the administrators to create the environments and the climates necessary for the right things to happen. So in student life, I think right now, we are not afraid of the C word. That word is change. And we are doing it every single day. We've been doing it since last spring. And we're going to continue to do that. And that not only means structure, but it also means how we're going to spend the resources we have. So we have a limited set, but we're going to carve it out and use it to create an all-campus leadership retreat for students. We're going to carve it out and use it to support programming. We are working with Student Senate as their advisors to talk about how to use their budgets effectively to put more money on the table for students for different things. So I think you're probably in the middle of experiencing some change, but we're doing that every day in student life. You're going to see more of it.
Hello, my name is Doug Tuga. I'm the interim dean of engineering. And I grabbed the microphone before I heard Carrie's answer, so I'm kind of embarrassed. I feel like the junior varsity coming in after the varsity's already run. But in the College of Engineering, we have 14 student organizations, and each one of those has an executive board. And in January of 2020, the before times, we put on a special workshop for the members of those executive boards to promote exactly the things that you're talking about, so that the executive boards of every student organization, not just the National Society of Black Engineers, not just the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, but all of the societies would know how to create a welcoming environment for every one of our students. And maybe it's good that I talk about something very small after hearing about what's going to happen at the university-wide, because none of our 14 organizations are tier 1 with Student Senate. And so they wouldn't be eligible for the super deluxe Cadillac event, but we can run the tiny event in which those students, there were 28 people who got to spend 6 hours with Janelle and Byron. And they got to learn a lot of the stuff that I had seen in the K&I workshops. And I really think it made a difference in their lives. Whether it impacted them as a student or as a student organization leader, I know that it impacted them as people.
I want to go back to your question. You asked a question about overt racist behavior towards you, I believe. What? Okay, got it.
Hello, I'm Takedra Masters, and I'm the historian for the Black Student Organization. I know we're talking about creating welcoming environments for all students, but I've been pondering about when we were talking about committee as far as when people can come and make vice complaints. But when I was a freshman, I had a booklet for all of the activities that were and resources in the book about the school because I was a freshman. But there was not a resource that could point me to the committee so that I can complain about the things that were done to me if something was done to me. So what are we doing to ensure that we're creating safe spaces for students to come and complain and still feel like they're heard?
Well, you just gave me a task and to make sure that all students know that there's a bias incident committee and faculty and staff and how it's used and that is commonly used and that has worked to alleviate some of the complaints. So I just heard you and that is a task for me and I think all of us to make sure that that is much more available and announced all the time as a resource for everybody because it's an important resource.
Thank you. My second question is, joining a fraternity and sorority could be a life-changing experience. I find that many of my minority constituents don't get to join FSL because of a lack of financial support. Are you open to starting a scholarship fund to assist students of color pay for the steep costs of FSL?
Thanks for the question. So fraternity and sorority membership does require fees to be able to join. Those are outlined on the website. So scholarships for membership are, membership is, so there are foundations and endowments that will pay for students to be able to go to school. Those are dollars because it's educational in nature. Fraternity and sorority membership, while I believe it's educational, is not classified by the federal government as educational. It's considered social. And so the manner in which it happens for many current members or people who are anticipating becoming members is that they are eligible to apply for scholarship dollars through the organization in which they become a member that then would offset their tuition and books and fees on that side that then would free up potential resources to be able to pay your membership dues. It kind of works in a roundabout way. So the conversation, this question was asked last year or something close to the question was asked last year. And the Panhellenic Council, which is the organization that oversees our sorority community, and the Interfraternity Council, which is the group that oversees our fraternity community, had this conversation and had done some research about can they establish that here on campus? Can they establish that in their own structure, in their own way? There was some guidance around some tax implications around that. So this is a way longer answer than you wanted, so I apologize. So the answer to the question is it's possible. It involves some things here at the university about whether we can set up a fund to be able to do that. But also it can't be a fund that's solely for students who are non-white. It would have to be for all students who maybe come from a certain socioeconomic background because it isn't just students of color that that are challenged with the ability to join. We have other students on campus who don't come from a socioeconomic ability to be able to pay for the membership dues. And so so that's how we would get at it if there was a decision to be able to do that. And so the students have investigated that, are talking about that. How would we fund that? Are those gifts to the university from alumni that would provide those scholarships? So that is part of the conversation.
So are they in conversations with student orgs to support minorities?
In conversations with student orgs to support
Yeah,
minorities.
Like
Can
student
you,
orgs, like Black student organizations, you said it was conversations happening about it. Have they come to like the Black student organizations live or?
so my understanding of the conversation is internal inside of the fraternity and sorority community about whether they have the ability to set up a scholarship fund that would provide scholarships to students to be able to join. So that's an internal FSL conversation. And then if that were to happen, then we would be able to share that with anybody that's expressing interest in the fraternity and sorority community. And of course, then we would be happy to share that. Candidly, I will also just share, we are in the process of inviting a historically African-American sorority to campus. Hands down, 3 or 4 times the amount. It is more money to join a historically African-American fraternity or sorority than it is to join one of our traditional groups. That is a national level conversation. So if you wish to join any one of our fraternities, it's about $500. If you want to join Kappa Alpha Psi, it's $2,200. Upfront, cash. It has to be a money order or on a credit card. But if you want to join Lambda Chi Alpha, Phi Delta, whatever, it's like $450, $500. That is a different entrance point. That is a massively different entrance point. The university has no control over that. That's just the way the national organizations are structured. So this is a concern. This is a problem. This is not just at Valpo. This is a nationwide challenge. And so I can also share with you that there are national level conversations about the fact that the historically African-American groups have completely priced themselves out of the ability to be successful on campuses like ours, other predominantly white campuses, because a chapter of one, our Kappa Alpha Psi chapter has 1 member. He's amazing, but he's just him. And but not having a chapter experience, right? It's not like there's 8 or 12 or 17 or 40. It's 1. Very isolating, right? So, but the challenge is that I don't have $2,200 to join anything right now, right? So, and I'm not in college. So so thank you for the question. It is not one that has an easy answer to it. But it is one that we are working on and talking about to try to make sure that those who wish to join fraternity and sorority life, that the financial aspect is not the sole reason that they don't make that choice. So thank you.
I want to comment actually on part 1 of your question real quick, because I appreciate, we absolutely do better with the advertising of the VERT team. But the other thing I want to just put out there is I'm still in the first year of this job. I've been at Valpo for 14 years, been here, but as the Dean of Students, I really do view my role here as the student advocate on campus, and my job with my team is to develop a support system for our students in their life here. So it goes back to with his question that really stuck with me was trust. The trust is maybe not there. And maybe students don't feel like they can come and talk to myself, other individuals in my area about concerns or issues that are impacting your world and your ability to be successful here on this campus. And I promise we're going to work on that trust together. Okay, it's going to take time. So I can stay up here in front of this whole room right now and say, come talk with me. If you've got a concern and you don't want to fill out a form, great. Come to my office, let's talk. I love talking. I love talking with students. Okay, this is why you're the reason why I do this job. But that's all talk. And there's got to be some action behind it. There's got to be some trust rebuilt between our offices and our students. So just know that that's a commitment on my part. If you have a concern in your world that's impacting your ability to be a successful student here, I want to hear about it. I want my staff wants to hear about it so that we can work with you to come up with a strategy that will help. It may not be the ultimate solution, but we want to know. We need to know your story, to know what your world is, because as Kim mentioned earlier, that's been siloed off from our lives for a long time. And so I want to know your story. I want to know your path so that we can work in student life in other areas of campus and partnerships that we have across every person of this panel, so that we can start rebuilding that trust and building that action plan to help us move forward.
And I think rebuilding this trust is important for me too, but that you did do these kind of conversations where you feel safe and we feel safe to tell you what we're doing, where our limitations maybe are, where our hopes are. I think this is very helpful, and now I see why you commend them after a little bit of the process, because it is courageous, but also allows to build this trust that is necessary to move the campus forward to a better environment, not only for all of us, but also for the students that are coming in the future. So I thank you, because now I see that this is one of the results of this conversation.
Hello. So my name is Essence, and my question can be interpreted a few different ways. But just to piggyback off of Takeeja's question, part of that answer was that FSL is a social thing. So we have the legacy scholarship, which is academic. But for many of us in this room, our ancestors wouldn't have been able to attend Valpo at one point because of the history of the location. So for us, how does that legacy scholarship apply? So my question would be, how is this institution addressing institutionalized systemic racism and classism within our structures?
I think the first thing to do is to identify it. Last year we did a book, Ibram X. Kendi at the College of Nursing and Health Professions, the faculty. I did it with the faculty and the staff, called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And we read the entire book the entire year. We took a chapter each month and we read it and we talked about it. And it was enlightening to understand that racism is about systems. It's about systems and doing away with systems. And it got us thinking and talking. And that's how we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to, first of all, say that it's here, this is where it's at, and this is how we dismantle it and deconstruct the racist things that we have in our place. Sometimes we do things for so long that they're entrenched in what we do, and we don't recognize the bias. We don't recognize racism in the system. And so the system continues, and until we identify it, then we can't change the system. So that's one thing.
I would add, and this will take us right back to the beginning, but that was one of the big reasons for the action agenda, that we needed to tackle systems. And so the action agenda is laid out in such a way that it touches so many different systems on our campus in different offices. So when I think about the system of education in the classroom, there are systemic issues when you don't have anything other than white authors or text, book writers. That's systemic. That is something that we can work with faculty to begin to start. Same thing for the tenure and promotion standards. It's systemic to build a model that is based on probably a white male who was heterogeneous and that had a wife at home that could take care of all those responsibilities and therefore could just teach the classes and do research and then award that. When we know that's not the reality for many people, and if that becomes the basis for our standards, that's systemic and that's an issue. So each of those action agenda items you can look at, and I think that is where Valpo is beginning to tackle some of the systemic issues we know we face.
And I see it as part of my job and the OMP staff that we are advocates to identify, because we're being trained. We've been trained, we studied systemic racism in higher education, and we are trained ourselves in all the time to make sure that this is the training of advocates for diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you are comfortable in your position, you are not tackling some of the systemic racism that is happening because you're gonna get pushback. So the position that has been created, I have to make it alive, but I have been trained with, we have to give pushback because I can see maybe something that, not that they don't see it, but I can see, I studied and I have to point it out, and with the help of the students and other faculty members and other administrators, we can point out and start pushing to remove those systems. Now, the systems are difficult to change because people like an inertia, they feel sometimes they are embedded on tradition, sometimes they're embedded on monetary decisions, sometimes they're embedded on cultural tradition, and those are, they take time to change, and some of them are not. Some of them are very quickly, we can change it very quickly by revising applications to say, this question is completely leaving some people out. So we can work at many levels, and I think my division should be doing that all the time, asking ourselves, is our system leaving people out, and how is leaving people out, and let's look at it. So that's how I see part of the job that I have to do in the institution.
Since I think that's a great question, I just want to share real quick. I think something that we do a lot in student life and other places, I'm sure as well, is thinking about whose voices are we lifting up, whose students' voices are we lifting up. So when we're asked, by the President's Council or somebody else, like, can you send us a list of names of student leaders? We're not thinking of the same 5 white students, right? We're trying to make sure who's in live that we think that this would be a really good opportunity for. Who do we know in this organization that we can lift up their voice? So that way there's exposure at higher level meetings and decisions. So that way there's opportunities for students to voice, and whether that's an informal meeting or just a casual gathering, right? But because those are the opportunities to build relationships and have those students be represented in ways that maybe they haven't been traditionally.
Thanks very much. I know of just a handful of you in the room. So I think the newest person on this panel. My name is Brian O'Rourke. I am the new-ish Vice President for Enrollment Management here. I oversee admissions and financial aid. And so since your question was specifically about a legacy, I wanted to really address that. Anila made an interesting point about systems and structure. And I think it's important to own that and to name it. As an example, private institutions like Valparaiso talk a lot about the admission process and a holistic review process. Well, I don't think many people know this, but the holistic review process in college admissions was originally created by highly selective schools for the purpose of excluding Black Americans and Jewish Americans from post-secondary education. That is quite literally an admission structure that was put in place to protect what was in existence in that time for higher education. We need to name things like this. We need to own things like this. I will say that the removal of the SAT requirement or the standardized test requirement was a step. What we saw this year, quite frankly, was it increased the number of applications for first-generation students and students of color. It did not increase the enrollment. It just did not. And so we need to own that, and we need to understand what are the additional structures we have to put in place around access. And access is not just who we admit, but it's who we recruit. It's the schools that we visit. It's the financial aid opportunities that we provide. It is rebuilding the structure in a way that not only acknowledges, but directly takes head on the structural barriers to college admissions for populations in this country. And that is something that we're talking a lot about in the enrollment and admissions area. We are, some specific examples. So we are engaged now with 6 different organizations throughout the state, primarily focused on promoting college enrollment and mentoring and academic support for first generation and students of color in the state of Indiana. And we're matching that with scholarship offers for those students to increase the eligibility and remove the financial component of this issue of college enrollment for more students throughout the state. We're exploring, and actually are pretty far down the road on some significant and meaningful access initiatives that will quite radically, we believe, address the issue of the students that we admit and address sort of the barriers that exist sort of just in the history of the identity of a university that's primarily white. And what that looks like. And so I wanted to acknowledge that and say that out loud because your question started with the question of legacy, and that is a perfect example of the structural barriers that exist in post-secondary education in America. And I want you to know those are the conversations we are having in a meaningful way in the admissions office.
And in addition to what Brian has said, I think you're right on point. And I think the other thing too we have to think about is our systemic racist thinking. When we think about students of color, we begin to talk about bridge programs. You know, how do we get the bridge programs? How do we translate them from high school? And my question is always, where are the students of color that are presidential scholars? Why are we not recruiting them? Why is it that whenever we talk about increasing the students of color, we're talking about helping them and bridging them and doing. There are brilliant Black students and students of color out there. We need to target them when we're recruiting. So we can still be a school that maintains Christ College, and we can have increased diversity in Christ College based upon students who have the same level of brilliance. But it's all about our thinking as well.
Good evening. My name is Mike Tyler. I'm the Associate Provost for Graduate Education. Are there any graduate students in the room? That's a problem. I'm newer than Brian, but not as new as Angela. In the graduate world, we have real struggles around diversifying graduate student populations. And one of the questions I had the opportunity to ask Angela when she was interviewing for the position was about how she would help me address that need. And in fact, when I interviewed for the position, they asked me how I was going to address the need. One of the things we just started actually this past week was a reach out to McNair scholars. Anybody know what the McNair Scholarship Program is? No? Okay. The McNair program is a national program for students of color, undergraduate students of color who are interested in research, and they engage with faculty research at the undergraduate level to begin developing their own research agenda so that they can move into graduate school, so that they have the background and the skill set to perform the highest level. And we just actually this past week started a campaign to reach out to McNair scholars as a way to begin to try to diversify the graduate population here at Valpo. So it's a long road, and I have a lot to learn, and I do appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight and listen to your concerns. But I did want to share that we are taking at least some beginning steps to try to address those needs at the graduate level as well.
Hi, my name is Allison Howard. I'm the committee chair for the Committee on Diversity and Inclusion with Student Senate. So I'm super excited to hear everybody speak and getting to talk to everybody as well. My one question would be, after last year, we did notice and see in the news the lack of trust with both law enforcement and people of color. And so me also as an RA, I got to meet Vupti in a way that other students don't get to. Is there any plan or program that we could create, that would allow students of color to build a better relationship with the Valparaiso University Police Department?
So one thing that I want to tell you is that the chief of police of Valparaiso University is part of the bias response team. And he is committed to community policing, and he's been working with his department, and a huge part of the action agenda included the Valparaiso police, and they have included some of the training that we would like to give. So we are taking them as staff members and they will have to go through the same training as other people, but he is a big supporter of community policing. But I think there are some structures embedded in the racial thinking in the police itself, like the department, that need to be worked, and there's always work to be done in that regard. But the action agenda has a big part of that, and they did do a thought of thinking about it. Even they thought about uniforms, how invited to these gatherings, and of course the training that they're going. But I think when I read that as part of deciding to come here, I was very excited that Valpo was thinking in those lines. Now we have to make it happen continuously, so it's a part of the culture of the university.
I'm going to do something quick here and just let you know, one of the action agenda items is around policing. If you do not know Dr. Caroline Ban in the Department of Social Work, I think that's a person to reach out to. She is specifically working on police social work, if you will, and working on trainings with police teams. And she has a fellowship, and she's been doing this. I know she's been working with the local, not the campus, but the local police department in this area, and is a big fan of that. And if you don't know much about social work curriculum, one of the core competencies, and they have a list of core competencies, and you have to learn about these and you have to maintain these in order to be an accredited program. And our program here is accredited, is on diversity alone. So our social work department talks this topic all the time. They're very concerned about microaggressions. They're concerned about systemic racism and oppression. They're working with the police department, but Dr. Caroline Ban here on campus is doing some of this work currently.
Yeah, the short answer, yes. It lets you and I work together with Chuck Garber and make it happen quickly. So let's you talk. I think it's a great task for you with your role as Student Senate. Also, there's a partnership in this room as well. I know Chuck will be 100. He's already on board with this. So I will help facilitate this. Let's you and I talk. And we can get this happening sooner than later. Chuck.
Charles Garber.
Charles Garber. But everybody calls him Chuck.
Okay, so since we're on the topic of like systemic issues and infrastructure, I wanted to point out like a concern of mine with our system. So it's like this idea of us having things under one department. So while Angela seems great and like she wants to do a whole bunch of work, God forbid Angela leaves and we're back at square one, you know? So like, I think what's happening with the OMP right now is another prime example of that. When certain people leave, the infrastructure crumbles. So is there a way we can like implement a universal commitment so no matter who leaves, the work is still getting done?
So the answer to your question is yes. The manner in which we get to that yes might look a little different. One of the things that I have found over the last 9 years here is that every position description now has a diversity statement in it. You can't work at Valparaiso University and not know that we are on the path of being exceedingly committed. Should have been for years before, can't undo that, but where we are now. So when we, and I can just speak to Student Life because those are the search committees I've been on, but I also have been on a couple of other faculty searches, there is always a question, always. What is your commitment to equity and inclusion? What has your experience been about that? How are you going to bring that to Valpo? So it is front and center. It is not hidden away to be like, oh, and by the way, we have these students over here. No, it is like, this is a priority for the institution. The action agenda isn't the OMP action agenda. It's Valparaiso University's action agenda. I've heard President Padilla reference the action agenda in at least 9 out of every 10 conversations I have with him, asking people, were you a part of that? Are you advancing that? What part of it is yours? You know, that type of piece. I think the action agenda helps to do that as well. And then I think it is really important for you as students to ask, what are you doing for the action agenda? not in an aggressive way, just in a like curiosity kind of way. What are you doing? Have you read it? Do you even know that it exists here? What conversations you've been a part of? If you haven't read it, can I show it to you? Here's where it is on the website. Invite you in, right? We also need to do that with one another, to be able to say that to folks about how can we be a part of it. There are sections of the action agenda that are also siloed, where not everybody's being invited to the table to have the conversations, right? So I think what you're seeing at the university, what you're seeing across the institution as we welcome new friends into the family, right, into the Bethel family, and as others are being invited to serve in some different roles, you're just seeing more people reach across and be like, can we get rid of this barrier that's here? And so I don't personally see the action agenda as OMP's responsibility at all. Because if it is only OMP's responsibility, then it's going to fail. Because it's got to be all of us. So the more we talk about it as though it's Angela's or it's OMP's, it's already failing. So we have to take it. Carrie Whittier is responsible for the action agenda. I can't do it alone. I got to do it in community with other people. But also, my sense of responsibility to that is under the leadership and vision of our president, our provost, our assistant vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So there are people who are being seen as the lead, who are helping to set the priorities, set the timeline on some of those pieces. But I can just share that I think it's the universities, and the university includes everybody, faculty, staff, students, alumni, parents, community. Like, we all got to be a part of that action agenda. So the simple answer is yes. The more complex answer is we're on that journey together. And I invite everybody here to be in conversation with others at the university about what role they're playing in the action agenda.
And I see things in addition to that. I think that we need to bump it up from the action agenda to the strategic plan of the institution. Because the action agenda was set in place to keep rolling regardless of whether certain people were here or not. And as you stated, it crumbled and it failed because we were waiting for budget, and we were waiting for this, and we were waiting for that. When you make a determination that strategically, diversity, equity, and inclusion is how we function as an institution, and sustainability is in place. So it's not about, do we have the money, do we have the person? It is in place. There are pillars in place in the institution that makes it function. So I think that we need to take the action agenda and maybe do something different, but it needs to be part of the strategic plan. So it's not something I have to pick up and say, okay, where do I need to do it? No, it comes from a whole different perspective.
I just wanted to quickly echo something that Carrie pointed out. Understanding you have a finite amount of time, right? You have 2, 3, 4 years, and it's a real lived experience for you. And the regular academic cycle and the inertia that lives in higher ed is frustrating as all get out for students. We know that because you have a short lifespan with us. It takes time to change a culture. And one of the things, but I do want to echo one of the things that Carrie said is the university commitment to this. In my lived experience, about 2 months before about a month before I even applied for the position of vice president, I had the opportunity to talk to President Padilla, who at that point had just started. And I will say that in that initial conversation before I had even applied for the job, he said, go find the action agenda on our website and look at it. If you're not only prepared to work on this action agenda, but also excited about it, then I don't want you with us. He brought that up in my initial conversation with the person before I even said, yes, I'm going to apply. So while I understand frustration of the forward momentum or lack thereof, and the transition and all the reasons that are frustrating for you all, I want to echo what Carrie said, that this is a true and honest commitment by the institution to move this action agenda forward and make it part of our culture in a meaningful way. So it's not just an agenda that's out there, but it becomes a part of the meaningful lived experience here.
And I just want to echo our attention to the strategic planning, and I think all the students here should pay attention to that process because it's happening right now. And so that's one. The other thing that I think is important, today I was talking to the former co-chef of Civic, and she told me that when Civic, this is an entity that was created to move diversity issues forward, that represented all members of the university, and she was telling me that she didn't want Civic to be the synonym for the action agenda, because Civic can bring issues and concerns from other parts of the university and move diversity forward in a way that maybe we didn't think about during the action agenda. And I wanted to bring Civic to put together the budget to move the action agenda and say, okay, that entity is so important for the diversity work that it needs attention and care, and we're not going to use it for the purpose of the budget. We're going to create another committee that can create be faster, and we can move the budget of the action agenda forward, because we want those kind of entities working for the university and renewing themselves regardless of the administration. So Civic can happen even if OMP staff is not here, because they have committed members and they commit for several years, and they volunteer for other years, and so I think having those entities are very important, and supporting them, and also paying attention to the moments when the strategic planning is happening is very, very important. And so that's something that we all should look at closely.
Hi, my name is Jeremiah Johnson. I'm the treasurer of the National Society for Black Engineers chapter we have here at BAPA, as well as a member of the track and field team we have here. And my question is, if there are standards for coaches and staff to go through diversity and inclusion training, and how they go about racism on teams and with coaches.
I'm sorry, but you have to repeat that. I didn't hear the end of the question.
So basically what I was asking was, are there standards for coaches and staff to go through diversity and inclusion training, as well as how they go about dealing with racism and things like that with teams and coaches?
So the answer to your first question is, we do not have required DEI training for our coaches. That's not something that's currently part of what we do in athletics. We have done numerous, we have had numerous educational opportunities in those areas, but we've not required that everyone attend those. We do run into some scheduling problems because of the way the seasons work, and with teams in and out of season when we require, because sometimes people just aren't here. So we have in the past tried to have those opportunities over the course of the year at different times that different people could take advantage of. Do we need to do, and so last year, we did do a number of things. We redid the One Noble Promise. We did have the committee. I know you were on the committee. I don't know if you had the opportunity to be in any of the meetings with the strategic diversity plan that we put together. So there will be action items in that. We do need to do better, without question. Do we have standards, written down standards as to what we expect our coaches in that area? I would say no, we don't. We certainly have standards of professional behavior that we expect. We have had instances where we've had conversations with coaches where we feel like they have not met those standards in the way that we thought were appropriate when those are brought to us. So I don't know if that answers your question, or Do we need to, do we have it in a formal way? No, we don't right now. Although we do have opportunities for that, but not in a required way.
So is there like some kind of penalty or like consequences that coaches and teammates will have if they did like do something
Well,
else?
if teammates did that?
Yeah.
So a couple things happen with that. So when we've had situations that that could be racially related, or we do put those into the bias incident system. So we have done that because one of the things we want to do is we don't want the student athletes to necessarily be treated differently than any other students because they are students. So we want them, where it's appropriate, we do want them to be part of the university system with all the other students. So there have been instances where we have reported into the incident bias system related with student athletes. The second piece to that would be there is a student athlete code of conduct, and student athletes could be found in violation of that for things that you described that could be racially motivated, and we would then also deal with that internally if we thought that it rose to that situation. I can't think of anything that's been brought to my attention that rose to that. Now, I'm not saying things haven't potentially happened that didn't get to my office, but we've been fortunate that that hasn't been the case to this point.
Thank you.
I just want to go back to what Lem said about systemic issues, and Steve brought up the C word, which is change, and I wanted to learn about the A word, accountability. So how you holding your constituents accountable for the actions, like the actions and everything that's going on with systemic issues that we face on campus.
So one of the first things that we wanted to have as an outcome, at least for this discussion, is to come back and work in team and maybe brainstorm. So give continuation to these kind of discussions that inform what we need to do in campus, and also that you can have continuation in the conversation, and you can ask us more questions, and we can maybe bring different responses and brainstorm between us and with you all about it. So that's one of the things, and maybe we could do it more often. I think that will be very healthy. The other thing is that I think part of leading the effort that Valparaiso put together to put the action agenda, because it is indeed a university effort, it is indeed, I think, when I say, well, it's my responsibility, one of my responsibilities is not to make all the work action agenda because I cannot do it by myself, but ask the questions, what have you done? How can I help you? How can we move forward? And when something is not coming forward, maybe come to the team and say, this is not happening. How can we move it forward? So I think, although it's not my sole responsibility, I think it's part of my division to make sure that this work is done and getting done all the time, and report that back also to the president committee and all the committees that I'm part of now that I'm here. So I think that's part of the creation of this position, the accountability.
It's a great question, and there's actually more accountability on this action agenda than I've ever seen here. So I want to share that with you because I've been here over 20 years. Before we had civic and some other things, we had diversity concerns committee. We had a lot of grassroots, what I would call efforts going. They were largely just that, volunteer grassroots. There was not necessarily accountability. Everybody believed in this and did as much as they could. The action agenda is everybody on there is being held accountable by President Padilla and a board member. So that's the very highest levels you can go. I have never seen the board involved And truthfully, in the past, I don't know that we were held accountable by any previous president. And so, I mean, honestly, knows we have a call next week with board member Cornell Boggs, who's an alum, and we have on that call will be President Padilla. And the question on the call is, what are you doing? What progress has been made? And it was Cornell's suggestion and strong, said you need to put up a dashboard. So we have a dashboard also. And I realized that many things say paused. And so I was glad I was able to talk about what's going on behind the scenes that's not totally paused. But the dashboard, board, president, all holding people accountable.
I want to give you an example from a local area. Within counseling services, the whole staff has committed for the last year and a half to have DEI and A be our major agenda growth. We're working on that. And it's our major agenda again this year, and planning something for January that will have a focus in the area. But what we do is we hold each other accountable. We mess up with some frequency in terms of personal pronouns or misassumptions about somebody just based upon some identity characteristic. And we have an agreement, no matter what level, myself when I mess up, we'll call each other out on it and just say, that's not the right pronoun this particular individual uses, or why did you say that particular thing? Because that was something that's hurtful to that particular student. So we're building that in the order there for ourselves about what each other.
On the individual level, administration at the university will evaluate annually. As part of the evaluation process, we all submit goals for ourselves for the coming year. And it was at the president's direction that on my evaluation, I believe everybody, many of the people up here, one of our personal goals is related to diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so those goals may look different for each one of us, but each one of us has made a commitment in that area that we will be held accountable for. Next year, when we go back for our evaluation process, have we met that goal if we haven't? What have we? So I think there's a lot of different levels of accountability that are built into the system now to help move these processes forward.
Would you be comfortable if I asked you a question back in return? Oh.
Just to respect everybody's time, we have time for about 1 to 2 more questions after
David, can I ask you a question in return? What does accountability look like to students? Because we can talk all day about accountability at our level, but if you don't see it and you don't think people are being held accountable, or the universities not being held accountable, or departments are being held accountable, or faculty, I'm curious about how would we communicate and demonstrate accountability in a better way that then students would be like, there it is. Because even just listening here, I think you guys are like, we don't get any of that, right? We don't understand it. Not that you don't understand it, but that you don't see it with your eyes. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Anybody, really genuinely, how would you as students know that accountability is happening to the items in the action agenda? Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
I think for me, accountability would look like, so you're a parent, you have a kid, they do something wrong, you do things to straighten them out or put them in order. You guys mentioned that President Padilla is on calls with you guys to make sure that you're doing what your job description specifies. So I think accountability just looks like just holding each other accountable. President Padilla holding them accountable, or not taking it the wrong way when a student says, okay, well, you said plan A, but you're not doing plan A. You're going plan B. So for me, that's what accountability looks like.
That's very helpful.
I also think when we had the advisory for President Padilla, like you said, President Padilla was like, be transparent with the students and tell them what's going on. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And telling the students what's going on, like Lisa said, that's what accountability, you can show accountability with the students, and that's what Jose Padilla is trying to do. Like tell the students, hey, what are you doing? And something like that.
I think another thing with accountability is things getting done. If things are getting done, I know somebody's holding somebody accountable. So that's the biggest thing for me.
I think for me, like you said, it's not our responsibility to come to you and ask all the time, especially when we are the victims, stuff is happening to us. So I feel like just something as simple as making sure you're sending emails. Like, let me update, not waiting until there's a conflict to put it in the email, oh, this is going on as a rush job, but something that you do normally. This should just be something it's a progress. We're all growing and changing together. So I think that it's only fair that we stay updated. Because if I don't know what you know, then how do I know something's going on? Like I just like to be informed.
Right. That's super helpful. Nick, I know I see that you want to say something as well.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off everybody what they said. Basically, we want to emphasize, don't be secretive about it. Be upfront about it. Talk about the progress. Celebrate the progress. Celebrate if it is completed. Celebrate these things and announce these things university-wide without giving off a sense of complacency, but we're giving off a sense of progress and accomplishment. With these things. So I would say just announce them, be transparent, have conversations, like Keisha said, and all of those things.
That's super helpful, I think, for us because I want to make sure that as we are using words and references like change and accountability and things like that, that we are interpreting it the same way, right? Because accountability for a team member on my team, I may or may not be able to talk with you about because that's protected by human resources or by our policies and those types of pieces. And again, back to I think Len's question earlier about trust and if you don't trust that stuff's happening, right, then you're going to question it with very good reason to question that. And so that's why I asked, so not trying to put anybody on the spot about that, but what does accountability look like? How do we communicate it to you all so that we know that we're moving forward? We are not moving as fast as we need to, right? And I think everybody here would share that. And we have a lot of work to do, and I have things to learn, and we can all be doing more for sure. But I just wanted to make sure I understood. So I appreciate it. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thanks for just answering that.
Carrie, that was a great question. I also want to add, in order to hold someone accountable, you have to have the measuring pieces in place. You have to have the environment in place. So then you look for the difference. You look for the change in the behavior. And not so much for me calling you out, but you identify within yourself. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't mean to do that. There was a faculty member that came to me last year. She was teaching her class. And, we had this thing about Karens, and unfortunately, my name's Karen. So I get a little confused. So I have to watch myself because I don't want to confuse the situation. But anywho, she made a statement about Karen in her classroom. She was taking it from one perspective. But there were 2 Black students in her classroom that took it from another perspective. And they called her out on it. The students didn't tell me about it. The faculty member did. She came to me, she says, what did I do wrong? How could I have done this differently? She said, I apologized to them. I didn't mean to do it. I said, that is what we're looking for. How we do self-reflection, how we build relationships. Because at the end of the day, the biggest system on this campus is teaching. So when you talk about systemic racism, you have to look at the racism within the biggest system that's here, and that's teaching. And we can catch ways in which we're biased for any reason, based on anything, whether it's gender, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's race, so we can catch ourselves. Because, there's this thing now in the American Medical Association is trying to pass a law so that instead of babies being declared a gender at birth, they leave that blank. So then when they get older, they can just pick what gender they want, okay? And then now when you talk to some people, will say, well, this is the gender I was assigned at birth. Okay, well, I'm old enough to say, really, put the gender, look, this is how you came here, write the gender down so we're not confused. I had to backtrack. I had to teach and educate myself. This is where we're going now. Okay, so I think the biggest accountability that can occur here is our accountability to ourselves and our accountability to God. And that comes based upon our relationship.
I have a question about where the crossover between systemic racism and numbing. So Valpo's racist history is pretty deep, and I'm just I would like to know if or if you've come across whether it's on a grant or a personal school, if there are alumni who feel either excited or don't know how they feel about the DE&I progressions that have happened at the university. I'm just curious, like, what have you been hearing from alumni about what is going on and what has been going on over the past 2 years? Specifically, if you seen like an influx or like a decrease in money in that area in particular.
So what you're asking is there a direct relationship or inverse relationship to the increase in diversity on campus and the decrease in the amount of giving that comes to the campus? I don't see that with the College of Nursing and Health Professions. So, about four years going on 5 years now ago, they chose a Black dean. And so, but the money has not changed. The giving has remained. And so to me, that speaks a lot about the heart of the alumni and the donors of the university.
Something that I heard in the meetings is something that concerns the alumni is the shape of religions, right? There used to be a Lutheran strong religion, and now we are moving into several Christianities and different religions. So I think that but what I know for the meetings that we are, and we talk about funding and the donors and big donors, what I've seen is that donors are seeking to diversify the university also. So I think the movement is not only, it seems daunting because the society right now seems very divisive, but there are other peoples also outside in society that is trying to push for more diversity inside of the university. And I see that some of the biggest donors of Valparaiso, for what I heard, are trying to ask for proposals that bring diversity outcomes into the university and what we do. That's what I have gathered for the information that I have, but I don't have. But maybe in the workshop that we have, we can bring somebody of advance and tell us answer the question.
I just need to say, I applaud you guys. It's outstanding. I have a hard drive to Michigan, so I have to leave. But this has been very wonderful. Thank you very much.
I think we should all give each other a round of applause on the show. I just want to say this is the first step into that C word that Stevie said change. And I would like to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you, Student Senate. Thank you, my beautiful boards, for putting this together. And Matter Week is not over. We got 3 more days. So we have APIs and Giving Circles Saturday. We have tomorrow is
Jubilee.
Yeah, Jubilee. We have the Heritage Month for Live, and Sunday Voting Rights, hosted by Christina and Caroline Dan. So the week is not over, so you guys can come to the events and everything else. Thank you for coming out.
I just want to reiterate, thank you to all the administrators who came out tonight. We really appreciate it. For all the students, if you did not get your ID scanned when you entered the community room, please let us scan your ID before you leave. That's how we're going to contact you about future events.